If there's one thing we're finding out as 2013 comes to a close, it's that big smartphones are in. Nokia is jumping on the bandwagon with the Lumia 1520, a big device with a 6-inch 1080p HD display and a relatively reasonable $199 price point. Available in 4 different colors on AT&T, this thing brings big to Windows Phone 8, but the question is, can it compete with Android devices like the Galaxy Note 3, the HTC One Max, and the Sony Xperia Z Ultra? Let's find out in the full video review of the Nokia Lumia 1520. It's big and it's got some great features to boot, and it's here in the Phone Dog office, ready for its close-up, its full video review. It's the Nokia Lumia 1520, and to give you a recap, you know a lot about this device already. It comes in 4 colors, yellow, white, black, and red. The red one being a glossy variant, the other 3 being matte variants, for $199 with a 2-year agreement at AT&T. An AT&T exclusive, it brings Windows Phone 8 not only up to par in the specs department in comparison to Android and some of the other alternatives on the market, but also in terms of size as well. It brings Windows Phone 8 into the phablet territory, or tablet phone, or big smartphone, whatever you want to call it. It's here. Let's take a look and see what's changed on this, and despite having a larger display, if it's worth getting maybe for the internals or maybe for the content consumption opportunities you get with a bigger display. We'll take a look at that in the full video review. Before I get too far into it, thanks to our partners at Best Buy Mobile. They give us devices that we give to you for free on the site at phonedog.com. So when you go into Best Buy Mobile to get this on AT&T, they'll make sure you're walking out working. All your tiles will be set up the way you want to have them set up. They'll get your settings ready to rock and roll, your contacts transferred over. It's part of their walkout working program at Best Buy Mobile. But let's do a quick spec recap to take a look at this device. Just to give you a recap here, 2.2 gigahertz quad-core Snapdragon 800 CPU. So the first Windows Phone 8 device to have a quad-core Snapdragon 800 CPU brings the processor up into current processor speeds, if you will, current processor types, if you will. It's got a 6-inch 1080p HD display, so a really gorgeous display that's pretty big to boot. 6 inches is big even by comparison. I'm going to bring these over from my desk so you can see the comparison here between it in terms of size and the Galaxy Note 3. It's a big device all around with a 6-inch 1080p HD display. That said, it's absolutely gorgeous. The HTC One Max beside it here with a 5.9-inch 1080p display, and you can see the size difference between all 3 of these devices side by side. But 6 inches, really beautiful here as you would expect. Great for YouTube, or great for watching videos, I should say. YouTube has its share of issues on Windows Phone 8, as you know, but great to watch videos on, great to look at pictures on, really a beautiful display. The colors are crisp, they look great. The live tiles have never looked better on this device. We'll talk about that more in part 2. Over here, 20 megapixel camera, 1080p HD video recording, Carl Zeiss lens in the back, really a nice image shooter here, I should say, and then 2 gigabytes of RAM, 16 gigabytes of internal storage, a micro SD card slot for expandable memory. You got, of course, Windows Phone 8 as you would expect, and great all around, like I said, for video consumption. 16 gigs of internal storage. I believe I already said that, but you know what? I'm going to say it again. 16 gigs of internal storage, and a nice big battery back here as well. So nice all around. The specs have been brought up to par with Android devices. Let's take a look and see how this thing performs. Now, obviously, one of the first things you'll see on the Nokia Lumia 1520, obviously to maximize the screen real estate, you have more options for tiles on the home screen. You can see how my setup looks right here. You can move these around. There are 3 different size configurations. Now, interestingly enough, even for people, for example, we'll click on this. I mean to click on it and go into the application, but I wanted to highlight it. You can see the 3 tile sizes here, and that's the same for most of the applications on Windows Phone 8. So you can see the 3 tile sizes here. Surprisingly, or at least surprisingly to me, there is not a size that goes all the way across the screen. That's the maximum tile size that you see here with American Airlines, for example, in my People Hub. This is the middle size, and that's the small size. So despite having the extra screen real estate, you don't get any sort of additional tile sizes. I'd expect there might be a 4th tile size, for example. You don't get that over here. But out of the box, you do get some AT&T stuff: address book, family map, locker, navigator, radio, all the stuff you would expect, combined with all the applications that I've installed here. My Facebook, my FlightAware, you can see Xbox integration, of course, and then you've got here Drive, here Maps, Nokia applications, you know, and part of Nokia's kind of value add, if you will, to the Windows Phone 8 territory. I mean, they hedged their bet on Windows Phone 8, and now that they're being acquired by Microsoft, obviously it's a little bit of a different ball game, but before, they were trying to hedge their bets. They went exclusively with Windows Phone 8, and they really wanted to create, and still do to a large extent, want to create a valuable software ecosystem. So that's why you see some great applications like here Drive Plus, here Maps, and then of course, did not mean to do that again. Let's go and scroll down here. Instagram, which is now available, at least in beta mode, on Windows Phone 8. You got mobile TV, My AT&T, and then you got a litany of Nokia stuff here. Beamer, Camera, Care, Creative Studio, Mix Radio, Storyteller. We'll talk about all these individually, at least kind of go over them, perhaps for some of them talk about them more as well. But then, of course, your typical stuff here, People, and then you've got Vimeo, Viclone, Wallet, Weather, some of the stuff I've installed, YP Mobile, and Zinio. So obviously you can see similar Windows Phone 8, and this is something I want to bring up, and I'll bring this up in part 2 as well. But, you know, the software looks almost exactly the same as you would get on a Nokia Lumia 1020, for example, or a 925, or any of the other Windows Phone Nokia Lumia devices you've seen in the past, let's say 12 months. The software, there's little to change on this device. It's not one of those devices like the Galaxy Note, for example, where you get the added software value adds, for the most part, the added value software adds like you do on that device. It's very much a scaled up Windows Phone experience. So you can see here, for example, going into messaging, and we'll go into this test text message thread I sent with another demo phone, which you can see right here. We'll throw it over into landscape mode. And I should point out, all in all, really fast here. The quad-core processor works great. But then, as you know, Windows Phone 8 has always worked well out of the box, even with dual-core processors. Didn't necessarily need the quad-core processor, but still works incredibly fast here. But take a look here at the 6-inch display, nice and big, but still same problem that Windows Phone 8 devices have suffered from, and Windows Phone 7 devices suffered from. The keyboard doesn't stretch all the way edge to edge to the end of the display, for example. So there are just a couple of areas in here where I'm like, they could have maximized the screen real estate so much better. Instead of just kind of sizing it up, if you will, to 6 inches, they could have maximized much better. That's one of them we'll talk about more as we continue along. But AT&T 4G LTE connectivity on this device, you can see again some applications I've installed. Nokia Camera is a great one, and I know I'm kind of jumping around, but we'll take a look at that in just a bit, actually. Let's go down here to Internet Explorer and take a look at the 4G LTE connectivity. So we'll load this up. For example, we'll load up phonedog.com. You can see the keyboard here, nice and responsive as I type phonedog incorrectly. Phonedog, boom. Loaded up right now and take a look. So portrait to landscape, you're seeing the mobile version of PhoneDog loading up, but everything's nice and fast here. Little to no lag, and even pinch to zoom continues to be responsive on the Windows Phone 8 front. So I mean, nice and fast here all around, as you can see. Pinch to zoom, incredibly responsive. Keyboard works great. I like the autocorrect on the Windows Phone 8 keyboard. So if I'm in messaging, for example, and I'm typing a message to somebody, let's say, the quick brown fox is back from vacation. Quick brown fox is back from vacation. Let's say I meant to say vacations, for example, or the quick quirk brown fox. So nice to have that autocorrect ability. Still continues to be a great keyboard, but again, I see a couple of issues where I'm like, they could have maximized the screen real estate better, perhaps split the screen here between existing text threads and the actual text of the thread, if you will. Lots of different opportunities that they could have used to maximize the screen real estate on this device. But 6 inches, still a big device all around. You can see here, even for me with pretty big hands, hard to hold, and I have a hard time getting my fingers all the way around it. You do see some great stuff as a part of the Lumia Black software that you don't see or you haven't seen in recent devices, at least within the past couple of months. Double tap, for example, to turn the display on. Boom, like that. And I can swipe up without pressing the power button. But overall, the design language of this device, very similar to previous Lumia devices. You get your volume rocker over on the right side, power button just below that, camera shortcut button down here at the bottom, up top, a 3.5mm headphone jack, and over to the side, micro SD card slot, micro SIM card slot here, and down at the very bottom, a micro USB charging port. Now the camera does stick out a little bit on the back, as you can see, and obviously this is the white version. Clearly you can tell that. But the camera does stick out just a little bit on the back end of the unit, and then of course in the front you got your typical home, back, and Bing quick buttons, or capacitive buttons rather, and then the AT&T logo up top along with a front-facing camera. So design language-wise, very similar to previous Lumia devices we've seen. A little bit harder to hold in the hand though, because, and this is hard to show off on camera, but very much a curved edge here, making it a little bit hard if you're like me to hold your phone like that. It does tend to slip out of your hands from time to time. So if you're going to hold it, you want to put all your fingers around it and use it like that, versus something like, for example, the HTC One Max, where you've got kind of a raised edge here. It's a little bit easier to put your fingers on the side of the device. And then of course, Galaxy Note 3 as well, raised edge where you can put your fingers over on the side of the device and hold it a little bit easier. Really a nice device, a nice design, but still even that thinness comes back to hurt it ever so slightly in the usability department when you hold it in your hand. Keep it locked on phonedog.com. In part 2, we'll talk about the camera. We'll talk about more of the software value adds Nokia brings to the table, and we'll continue this conversation as to whether, 6-inch display is awesome, quad-core processor is awesome, but what else does this device bring to the table that distinguishes Windows Phone 8 versus Android and iOS? Stick around. We'll talk about it in part 2.